There we go. All right, welcome everyone to another one-day community event. As I mentioned earlier, this is a community event, which means that this is for you. So please use the chat liberally, share links to your landing page, social media profile. Let's support each other, let's connect, use the chat in there. We've got a really great turnout this evening for my fireside chat with Helen Murphy. So cannot wait to get stuck in. Quick one on me. If any of you don't already know me, my name is Stephanie Melodia, and I am a recovering founder, now podcaster, and naturally the first choice to host these one-day events. So it's my absolute pleasure to be here, to see you all. So great to get such a good turnout. And of course, to interview one of my faves, Helen Murphy. Helen Murphy, a lot of you, I think, already know her. But for those of you who don't, she is the CEO and co-founder of Opply, a B2B. Did I pronounce that correctly, by the way, Helen? Just to quickly check. That's already a good sign of a good startup name. Can the person pronounce it when they read it written down? All right, Opply, a B2B tech marketplace revolutionizing procurement for the food and beverage SMEs through automation. Helen has successfully raised $10 million in funding and has received accolades such as Female Tech Founder of the Year and Startup of the Year at the National Startup Awards. Woo, 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 congratulations, Helen. With a diverse background that spans leading sales and operations at Procter and Gamble, the corporate that's famous for the shampoos. That's what comes to mind for me initially, anyway.
Please.
And nappies. Consulting at Bain Co, running product at FinTech Moneybox, as well as starting and selling her own consumer goods brand. Helen brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. Everyone, please give Helen a warm welcome. Let's have the emojis going. Let's have the claps on the chat. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
This is when you see everyone's concentration face trying to find the emojis.
I love that. Helen, wonderful to sit down with you. I know that you're fresh off your squad session as well, so hopefully you are all fired up and all guns blazing. The title of this session is From Corporate Startup Founder, so I think it makes the most sense to rewind the clocks. Helen, can you take us back to that time when you were at Procter & Gamble, Bain & Co? What was going through your mind those years ago? What was that itch that you had to scratch when it came to entrepreneurship for you?
Yeah, so I would say probably a two-sided coin here. So there's one side which is you'll often feel quite innovative in your company. So when I was there, I was always known, especially at P&G, I was known as the fixer. So I don't think one of my managers actually said to me when I left, he was like, you never became a proctoid. So it's like the way they call Google people Googlers. And I never quite fit the mold. So like I think I hear that in a lot of founders, like they never felt like they quite fit the mold, but they generally did very well. And so I think I always had that side to me where it felt like I could be more innovative, and I was always slightly blocked by that in corporates. And I think the secondary aspect to this was, I don't know whether this is a positive or a negative. And when I started my career at P&G, and I can only say positive things about that company, I loved it because I had brilliant managers from the get. And then all of a sudden, in probably my last year, and then when I moved to Bain as well, similar thing happened where I'd say 50-50, I had great managers, and the other 50% I didn't. And as I'm hoping a few of you will resonate with, maybe a poorer manager will impact you more than you realize, and can take you to a different place. And so it actually came out of that, where I always felt like I maybe was a bit more innovative or similar. And it actually came from a place of, I guess, control and freedom is really important for me in my life. And it felt like being under the control of someone else, or how they dictated it or how they ran it. I just didn't want to do that anymore. So it wasn't even necessarily I had this like burning idea that I wanted to do. It was more the lifestyle I wanted to live, or that kind of life I wanted to grow didn't quite fit with the freedom and the control that was offered from corporates.
Yeah,
So
and
that,
I feel like many can resonate with that, definitely. So at this point in time, were there any examples that you had to look up to? Did you see anyone else setting up their own business where you were like, that could be for
yeah,
me?
actually not at all. So I think when you are in corporate world, you don't see anything else. So it was actually the reason I moved into consulting, because I was like, I need to see a world beyond this. So
That is
obviously,
wild, actually.
yeah, as in when I was at P&G, like we used to go to these events at P&G. For everyone, it's Procter Gamble, so they own like a lot of the big consumer goods brands like Gillette and Pampers and Fairy and Flash and stuff like this. Um, and I think we thought we were really out there in the world because we used to hang out with like Unilever and Warburtons, and I saw a Henkel in the room, and all these other like big CPGs. And actually, like when I stepped out of this world, I was like, how did I not know about any of this? And I
That's so
actually went for lunch the week with my old director, my very first director at P&G, and she was just, we were talking about this, and she was like, we, even in the world of AI now and similar, like I'm not going to say I run an AI company. That's a bit gross, isn't it now?
funny.
I think
Pretty blasé
everyone's,
at this point, Helen. That's so 23 of you.
yeah, everyone says this.
Joking.
Um, I genuinely think in corporates, it's very rare that you step into like a really different world. So yeah, I don't think I ever really met anyone that did this.
Okay, all right. That's really wild, actually. I wasn't expecting that answer. So we transition from your career in corporate into then kind of consulting, freelancing. Before then, just according to your LinkedIn profile, before actually joining Entrepreneur First, which we'll talk about as well. That's an accelerator. We'll explain to the group what that's all about, especially Entrepreneur First. It's got quite a lot of kudos to it. So talk us through a little bit like those stepping stones towards entrepreneurship for you.
Yeah, sure. So I think it was always about, for me, and I say this a lot now, it's always like if you chase the learning versus chasing the money. And everyone's always like, you went to work for Bain, which is one of the big management consultancies, so they think that was the reason. Um, but I always left a company as I was about to get promoted. So like when I was at P&G, I got offered like head of global e-commerce, and then I was like, ugh. Um, if you feel almost uncomfortable, like climbing the ladder, I think that's a pretty big indication. Um, and I think, yeah, and that's when I went to Bain. I was actually just, I believe in signs. So I know I'm going to sound really, I don't know, lame here or
Oh,
something,
I love
but
it. Bring it on.
um, I went to this breakfast that like all the big CPGs had organized, and there was a partner from Bain sat next to me, and I didn't even know what Bain was. I had absolutely no idea. And like people like prepare for years to go work for these consultancy firms. And I sat next to, she's called Claire, and we ended up just like, I'm an engineer by trade, so like we ended up just like nerding out about like the latest autonomous robots or something, I don't know. Um, and then the next day she emailed me. She was like, "Oh, I've referred you in for like our like program of something." And so I was like, "Oh, okay, I don't know what this is. Like, it could be interesting." Um, if I get obsessed with something, I get truly obsessed, and I think this is a founder trait in itself of like, it's very rare you dabble in being a founder or you dabble in any of this. So it's like as soon as I found out about Bain, I was like, oh, all these different companies I can deal with. Um, like all these I can, I guess, consult for or learn about all these industries, etc. I just went like, it takes me. Oh, sorry. I end up reading comments. So I've got ADHD as well. So you'll just see me like moving a lot, and like I'll also get distracted by ringtones or something. And I think, yeah, I'd like to say there was a path. Like when I go for investment, I say there's a path. I genuinely think the most common theme was getting utterly obsessed with the thing in front of me and making sure that like hit something. So like as long as I thought this was like a really big like learning, I was out of my comfort zone on it. I just went full pelt at it. And so like that was just always my next path. I was like, what is the most difficult thing I could do next? I'm just
The next
gonna,
challenge.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Bain, so like jumping ship from the world of corporate was this kind of fluky opportunity, this dinner where you sat next to someone at Bain and they referred you.
Yeah.
What then put entrepreneur first on your radar? And can you explain for any of the listeners who aren't already familiar with what
Yeah.
accelerators are and what makes EF so special in particular?
Yeah. So EF, or Entrepreneur First, is now the world's biggest incubator for startups. So they basically bring in people who don't have a business at all, and then you basically match make with co-founders. It's really like a modern dating show, because you have to rank each other of who you want to co-found with, and it all goes public, and it's like this whole thing. It's very weird.
Okay,
Um,
so feelings must get hurt in the process. I have to ask
yeah,
you.
fully. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
This actually sounds
Um,
like a TV show.
Yeah. Someone actually pitched it to Netflix and they picked it up, and then EF vetoed it.
Is this
Um,
real?
yeah.
Seriously? Okay, I did
Yeah.
not know that. That's hilarious.
Because it's like real life founding, right? Of like how
Yeah,
it
yeah.
works.
Wow.
Um,
Okay. Amazing.
and it was honestly, so again, this goes back to connections. Like my my lab partner at uni was on the very first cohort of EF. And he's now he's head of AI at DeepMind, like very like smart guy. Um,
Wow.
and we were just out for dinner, and I was talking about like, oh, I've got really interested in these topics and these industries. And actually, when we were at uni, we won like the university startup program, so we got like a 50K grant to start a company. It was Birchbox before Birchbox was a thing.
Wow.
Quite sad. I should have done it. And then everyone went to work for Goldman Sachs. But it's, I think through that we were talking about it, and he was just like, would you consider this program? I think it could be quite interesting. And I'd say that's probably just a piece of advice I'd give everyone is get out of your lane. So like this, so often we stay in our lane and we learn about it. So we're like, I'm in insurance. I'm going to learn everything about insurance. Take every random conversation you can get. So like you never ever know when you're talking to someone or you're gleaming a piece of knowledge that is going to be relevant at some point. Like
Mm.
if I take this example, I studied biomedical engineering, which is highly irrelevant to my current field. Um, I was going for a board position, and then they sat there and they're like, "Oh, so why do you think this is good for board?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm really strategic. I'm really good at business." Blah, blah. And then they're like, "Well, our main industry that we deal with actually from our customer base, which a lot of people don't know, is like biomedical engineering and like that more tech side. Like, how could someone with your experience ever resonate with those people?" Um, and I was just like, "Well,
Wow.
let me tell
So
you."
random. So
Mm,
unexpected.
yeah.
Wow. And I guess my question to you on that point is where do you draw the line? So going back to that piece of advice of being open to meeting new
Mm,
people, having random conversations, I always share this crazy story where I said yes to an event I didn't want to go to, and it ended up the very short summarized version is it ended up resulting in our second highest paying client like the following year, all because I'd
yeah,
said yes to this thing. And
yeah.
obviously that stuck with me ever since, that now I'm always left with that question of how many of these random
Mm,
opening of an envelope do you go to? Because I also burnt out in the process. So it
yeah.
is one thing to say yes to everything, but again, where do you draw the line?
This is a really good question, actually, because I think, as you'll know, we get invited to so many events. Like, there's so many events out there and speaking stuff and all the rest of it. Um, I always follow the rule of like, if I'm just interested in the topic. So, like, because you'll get infused by that. I don't go to like events to network. I go to like, even I went to an event which was about like the laws of logic because I love logical thinking.
So interesting. Yeah.
Um, and it's like you're sat there and like who we're saying like there's a guy called Scott Galloway who writes like books on like the algebra of wealth and happiness or whatever. And he was at the same event. So we were talking, and then we had to
Helen,
have this
where was my invite? I'm literally Profi's #1
um,
fangirl.
he's a totally different persona to what I imagined he would be.
That's funny. We'll talk
Yeah,
about
he's
that
a really
after.
he'll get emotional about like this, I don't know, the state of the economy for younger people. But anyway, I generally think it's like, if anything sparks your interest, just like delve a little deeper in it. Go to an event on it, like listen to a podcast on it, actually really like learn about something and then try and apply it to something in your world. Like, if I just use quite a random example of this, one of my a founder I respect highly runs a company called Rusa, and it's a fish marketplace. And when you hear that, everyone's like, "Oh, okay." And one of the co-founders is called Joel, and he has a wickedly strategic mind, I'll say. He reads a book every month about a topic he has no idea about.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and I don't mean like business books, because I feel like business books are they're good, but he'll read it about like the Japanese war strategy.
Yeah. Like super
Um,
random.
and like he runs his product team like the Japanese army strategy,
Yeah, that's
because he like
interesting.
leads something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you there, it kind of echoes the whole kind of follow your passion advice. And funny that you mention Scott Galloway. I'm still not happy about not getting my invite to that event. He talks about how that's one of the worst pieces of advice ever. Like, to young people, I guess mainly, it's like, don't follow your passion. Like, you need to go and make bank, go and make money.
Yeah.
So I love that. I definitely resonate. I read weird and wonderful like books, podcasts, and things. But I guess like, how far do you take that? Because
Yeah.
do you like, is it possible to just go too far down one extreme? How do you bring it back to focus? Is there kind of like an 80-20 rule, or like, what's your
I
thoughts on
just
that?
need not to put pressure on it. So Scott's thing, by the way, is like actually learn a skill. So it's like, don't follow your
Yeah.
passion, learn a skill in deep detail. Like he always talks about this. I think like Tyler, he knows, who's now like, I don't know, Arkansas's like biggest tiler, because he was obsessed about like the alignment of tiling or something. I think this actually depends totally on your mind. So if I think about it, like my co-founder is he like zones in detail on a topic and he'll know absolutely everything about it. I like knowing about 50 topics at once and like pulling random
Mm,
bits from it. I think there is an importance in both. So I wouldn't do what everyone tells you to do. If you love just discovering lots of different things and like randomly like going into things, just pick up pieces from all of them.
mm,
You don't have to dive on any, but if you
yeah.
want to dive, like dive, and that could become your thing.
It's leaning into your strengths as well, right? And I love that we've got hashtag neurospicy in the chat as well there. I love that. And you're totally right. Like, something like my partner, he's exactly how you describe your co-founder, where he'll just like zone in, focus, none of the
Mm,
rest of the world exists. Whereas like you, I'm more interested in weird and wonderful things. So
yeah,
mentioning co-founder, I feel like we can move the story along to that side of it. So I have to ask, obviously we mentioned the TV drama of matchmaking with co-founders on EF. I'm
yeah.
judging by your face that you didn't meet your co-founder on EF. So what happened there? How did you meet your current co-founder?
No, I did.
Oh,
He was
okay.
my number one.
Ah,
The
nice.
sorry, so when I pull the everyone says this about I have a very expressive face, but it's not what's in my head. Um,
I was gonna say
so
I clearly misjudged your facial expression there.
I'm like,
So I
oh,
thought
this
you were like, no, no, we're not talking about
no.
that.
By the way, like co-founding relationships, so like what did it say? The average co-founding relationship is longer than the average marriage.
Exactly.
So
This is
like,
why we need to talk about this.
yeah,
Exactly. So
we have a
kudos to EF.
communication. Yeah, we have a coach who like
Okay,
comms coaches us, because
great.
otherwise, like, I don't think we could work together because so basically, if you're ever going to get a co-founder, and this is the F model as well, choose someone who is so complementary to you in the skill set point. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I like this person, I want to be their co-founder. Disaster.
Okay.
You need enough in them so you can respect them. Typically, like, you want someone, I guess, like working styles, core skills that is just total opposite to you. Because together you should
Wow.
do 2-3 times the number of work together.
Mm.
Yeah, like so say my first company was a consumer goods brand, which started, scaled, sold. There was a failure of another company in between, so don't get the illusion that it always works. But first and third worked. Question on where
Which
do we
one
find?
was? We'll come to the audience. So please keep putting the questions in the chat. We'll come to the audience Q&A. So Helen, I've just got your LinkedIn profile in front. So just to fact check, which were the first, second, and third business? I'm guessing the third is Opply.
Yeah.
Which were the
This
first and
first
second?
was called Suds and Goods. And so that was a consumer goods company. It was like raw baby food. The second one I don't put on anything because I was like,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
literally crashed and burned. And this was
How
actually
long
what
was that one? The crashing and
um
burn. How long did that take?
that's a very good question. It was, and this is probably a very good lesson actually. I'm going to say it was a 10-year. So
Oh, wow.
it was something which was always burning away in the background, like all the time.
Wow.
And so I just like just to work on it randomly, do bits on it, etc. It was basically a travel app. And don't do a travel app. And I think because I didn't concentrate on it at any point, I was just always like dabbling and doing bits on it, making like the logo, the app design, etc. I didn't properly ever invest in it, like
Mm,
mentally, that it just never took
mm,
off.
mm.
Um,
Okay,
yeah.
interesting. All right, so that's a fantastic lesson. So, like, if you're just going to leave it burning away in the background, that's what it's going to do. I think
Yeah.
also the fact that, as you mentioned, a travel app, funny enough, I've spoken to a few travel app founders recently, and it's like the frequency just isn't there. So that also makes sense. And so the first one was it called Suds and Goods? Sorry.
Something good, yeah.
Suds and Goods.
Yeah.
So that one you scaled and exited within 2 years, is that correct?
Yeah, but well, technically
That's
2 years, about
incredible.
3 years, but yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's I mean, still, it was 3 years. That's absolutely incredible, Helen.
Yeah.
How did you was that out of the Entrepreneur First
No,
Accelerator?
no, so this is actually
Amazing. And with the same co
so this was when I was at P&G.
Oh,
And so at the time when I was at P&G, I started when e-commerce was literally just starting. So this was like,
yeah,
I don't know, 12 years ago or some 12, 13 years ago.
yeah.
Um, and so there were two of us on e-commerce in Europe. Like, it was really not a thing. And so like we scaled that business. I used to sit in like Shenzhen in China for like a week a month. And so I thought, like, I know e-commerce, I can build this. Like I can start something in this. And I thought I had this like insight that no one else had. But so I should like highlight that as an asterisk. That's an EF phrase of like find an insight that no one else has about an
Mm,
industry.
mm,
Um, and yeah, so when I started that, that was while I was still working, and I basically just did e-commerce site, um, and like sourced. I was basically got a co-manufacturer. They were making like this raw baby food, and it was quite trendy at the time. Um, Actually scaled it way too quickly, so I scaled it to like
wow.
20 countries in like the first year. Um,
Helen, that's insane. How?
God. How? Again, probably connection. This was very local, actually. So I was still in the north at the time, like in the north of England, I should say. And there's like a very tight business community up there. And so there was just loads of like shippers and brokers. So it wasn't really a tech solution. Because I think
Mm,
everyone with like drop shipping thinks it's always tech. I literally
mm.
just knew a guy who worked at the port who could like ship it into different countries, and I used to like ring basically at wholesalers in those countries and be like, because dealt a lot with wholesalers at P&G because we were one,
Wow.
um, and ring them and be like, "Will you distribute this?" And he used to like ship it across to them.
Wow. Yeah.
Um,
That sounds
So
amazing. I mean, this is one of the advantages. There was a recent interview as well, which was a similar, making the leap from corporate to entrepreneurship. And I
yeah,
actually wanted to focus more on all the positives that come out, because I think it's really easy for these two opposing worlds to kind of look at each other and be like, ugh, like, poor, scrappy startup. And then the
yeah,
startups looking at corporates like you behemoth of a machine that lacks innovation.
mm,
But when you're in it, there are so many benefits. There's so many positives that you can take from that experience that can launch your entrepreneurial journey, as we're clearly seeing here with P&G.
yeah.
That's amazing, Helen. Shall we move on? So, sorry, did you want to share a bit more? So you scaled it across 20 countries, and then the exit, and then let's get back to EF, to Opply, and then I'm conscious that we've got some questions coming in as well. So
Yeah.
let's
I was just going to say a comment, and this is something my founders will be familiar with, is business is quite literally not personal. And if you listen to one of my squads from earlier today, and there's someone in the room from one of it, where if you start getting too much of a personal opinion about how a business is run or why a person in business did a particular thing, you'll probably like fail in your business. Like with anything, glean whatever learnings you can from it. Like it doesn't really matter. Like your personal opinion matters in the way you run your company. They're your values and the way you run it.
mm,
But like look at everything objectively and think, how did they run their marketing? How did they get the demand for that? How did they do this? That, like when people say like, oh, corporates are rubbish or whatever, I'm like, objectively, that's just untrue. Like there's so many things where if you actually break it down, like I was saying, people management is incredible in corporates. Like in startups, people do not get taught to manage people.
yeah,
Like they get taught to execute, right?
yeah.
In corporates, you go through like 5 years of like regular training on how to manage
Yeah,
a person. Like that's a massive advantage when you actually start a
yeah,
company.
totally, totally, absolutely. All right, love that. If anyone is in corporate or coming from corporate, let us know in the chat. Let us know, what's resonating along this journey, what you want to hear more of. And yeah, I think in maybe just a few minutes or so, we can come over to the questions. But before we do, Helen, I'm conscious I want to find out more about your story. So getting back on the chronological kind of timelines here. So you did have your first business while you're at P&G, which is incredible. Scaled and exited. Do you want to talk about the exit quickly? Is there anything there before?
Yeah, sure. So
Yeah, go
again,
on.
local networks. So again, going back to the point of you never know who you're speaking to. So sold it to one of those wholesalers that was distributing it.
Oh, that's
Mm.
so interesting. In which country are you able to share?
Yorkshire.
Oh, so you go right.
So in
Okay,
the
okay. So it wasn't like a
UK.
Singaporean wholesale. No,
Yeah,
that's incredible. Wow, that's awesome. So
yeah,
another part of wisdom for you, you never know who you're talking to.
mhm,
Your net worth is your network, as they say.
yeah,
All right, amazing. So going back to entrepreneur first, this accelerator, you had your current co-founder at Opply. He was your number,
yeah.
or they, I don't even know if it's a he. They were your
It
number
is.
one. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Your number one choice at EF. You
yeah.
mentioned sort of some of the things that you look for. So clearly you saw that in them. How do we
Mhm.
go from EF to Opply? And obviously that was back in 2020 as well. So talk us through starting Opply and then scaling that before we come over to the audience Q&A.
Oh, fun. Um, it's been it's always a journey, right? But I think scaling a tech startup as well was totally different. Like it was another. The first one I did, I call it like a business. So I split businesses into like business owners and entrepreneurs. And like business owners are like scaling, I think, a bit more like I call like solidly, profitably on the ground locally, where entrepreneurs are more likely to be like, let's just smash an industry up. It doesn't matter what it costs or how we do it. We sort of like break the industry. Um, so I think I was a business owner in my first one, an entrepreneur in the second.
That makes
So
sense. I see that.
um, my co-founder Martin, I say we're total opposite on the coin. So he's like a big data AI guy, like solved this really old problem in manufacturing with AI. When AI people meet him, they're like, oh my God, Martin Postel. And I'm like, so he's wicked. And I think when we started, we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. Like, I genuinely think like we found each other because we basically wanted to build the same type of company. We both have incredibly similar moral values. And like our big thing has always been for our company, we want to build a company where every person that has ever worked for it was like, God, that was like the best 2 years of my career or the best 5 years of my career.
That's amazing.
And so like we didn't really care what we built. And this is the crux of it, right? As I'm sure you'll know, Steph, which is like, it doesn't matter what the idea is, like execution is everything.
Preaching to
So
the choir. This is like that's going on my tombstone. That's all
yeah,
I preach about.
yeah. And so you could genuinely just pick anything as long as you pivot fast enough or like iterate fast enough, you'll get somewhere. So that was literally it. Like we started as like, I think we actually probably did quite the 1 day model of it was during COVID. It's when supply chains were a mess. So like global spikes. So we kept seeing this in the news everywhere. So we were like, we should do something in supply chains. It's trendy. And then I was like, right, I know consumer goods, you know data. What can we do with this? So we ended up going and speaking to, I reckon, 150 consumer goods people, like from like really big corporates to like small companies. And then we just mapped their pain points. So like did literally a heat map across it of where they were. Realized there was a massive problem in SMEs. The pain there was more feasible to solve, which was like they don't know who their suppliers are, or they can't get the right minimum order quantities to order from these suppliers, etc., etc. Yeah, so when we had that, we actually started super broad, which is maybe the wrong thing to do, but hey, we were like, we'll source anything for anyone. So this is our MVP. People would literally submit on a form and we'd just go find it. So it was me and him just
Love
sat there like,
that. Proper mechanical Turk in it right from day
yeah.
one.
Like, oh my God, yeah, literally Mechanical Turk. It was that.
Yeah.
So if
Brilliant,
anyone doesn't
brilliant.
know what that is, but yeah, and then it was literally, we just followed insight, like the most customers who came to us were food and beverage industry. Within that, we found that it was more like SMEs that came to us. Within that, we found it was mainly UK, US. And just like followed it.
So was the food and drink or food and beverage sector, was that purely coincidence, like
Yeah.
happy accident, given that you had that background as well? That just worked out.
Yeah, because technically I don't, it's P&G is consumer goods, but not food.
Yeah, I
So
guess
it's
more with
very,
the Sun's
yeah.
business,
Oh yeah, sorry,
baby
yeah.
food.
Um,
Yeah.
so definitely consumer goods. Like even our second biggest category is furniture. So like we could have been a furniture
Yeah.
sourcing whatever. And actually now like one of our investors is like a wood guy. So he's like the biggest wood exporter because he's like, I get this. And we were like, oh my God, we should have done furniture.
That's amazing. He must have the
Yeah,
best intros, right? Going to a network event. Hi, I'm the wood guy.
yeah, exactly. We've got the fish guy, the wood guy, and then every other. I'm the because we ship sugar, loads of sugar from Colombia. So we basically ship like massive white sacks of basically
Powder.
powder. So
Powder
I'm
from
known as
Colombia.
the powder guy.
The white powder guy from Colombia.
Yeah.
Hilarious. All right, before we get too derailed, Helen, I definitely feel like I could chat to you for hours. It sounds hilarious and super interesting. Just conscious of time, do you mind, can I get you to do a quick sort of summary of some of like these top lessons that have come to mind as you've been talking, just to summarize, and then we'll come to the questions.
Going back to the neurospicy point, if you think there's any sequential in my brain of stuff going on, there is not.
It does not need
Um,
to be, does not need to be.
so the gleams come out as I'm talking. I don't know if there's any like
Okay.
um
Shall I
but
tell
I'll
you what I
try and
remember then, if I'm
say
putting
again.
you under
Sorry.
pressure? Shall I tell you what I'm remembering if I'm putting you under
Yeah, sure.
pressure?
Yeah.
All right, what do I remember? So, follow your interests, be open to randomness, different conversations. You never know who you might meet, what might happen. Um, get really clear on your mission and values, especially as it relates to finding a co-founder. When it comes to your co-founder matching, don't fall into the trap of wanting to work with someone who you just love and you get on with. You want to have that core skill set being complementary. And any other pearls of wisdom, guys, if you've caught on something that I haven't already mentioned, pop it in the chat. With that in mind, I'm going to head over to the chat because we've had so many awesome messages come through. So I'm loving all the intros, all the links everyone's been sharing. Helen, I think you've already seen so many people resonated with ADHD. Someone's got OCD, bipolar. So we've got hashtag neurospicy gang. Love that, love that. So definitely not alone. All right.
Yeah.
Teresa, you saw this before anyway, Helen. I'm going to try and go in order. Teresa asked, how do we find a co-founder? Gibran, that's how you pronounce the name. You said Founders Nation, we
Gibbs,
are
yeah.
founded. Sorry,
Or Gibbs.
Gibbs. Okay. Teresa, what Helen was talking about was Entrepreneur First, which is an accelerator. Helen, have you got any other resources for finding a co-founder?
Yeah. Hmm. I mean, One Day is probably a great one. Like I know
Yeah,
at least four of my founders have got their co-founder through the one within the other founders at One Day. So
nice.
like there's a lot of like wicked co-founder like other people on this program that are probably very complementary to you. So like even like two of mine, I'm trying to think, like one was just heavily commercial, one was heavily tech. That was in like the space industry. It was quite random, but like they've done very well together. Um,
Wow.
there's one who's in like the beauty space, and then someone else was doing like AI with physical goods. So they kind of tied together.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. And that's all just through
I,
One Day.
mm,
Okay,
so I
cool. I've
think
also just
yeah, go.
go on, sorry, Helen. Sorry.
No, no, no. Okay. So I'll over
I was
talk. So
if there's any other founder resources that you can say, I've seen a lot of just job ads on LinkedIn, just advertising for a co-founder as well. So I've put that in the chat there.
yeah,
Gibbs has asked how much for. I don't remember
it was how much I
what
saw my
you.
company. I saw it pop up.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Can you
I'll
share?
tell you that in our one-to-one.
Okay.
It was enough to um, get me close to where I wanted to be. We'll say that.
Okay. All right. Grabbing private jets around the place. Nice, nice. All right. Joseph Draper's asked, could you elaborate a little more on we are taught to execute?
Sure. So, as in it from a startup perspective, I think that was
Joseph,
Joseph.
if you want to clarify, remember we talked about it, but
Yeah,
I guess he wants to understand kind of what that means on kind of
yeah,
executing, but Joseph, feel free. Go on, sorry.
yeah. So, in startups, I say because speed is everything. Like, it's very rare you'll just get time to just go for a week on like management training or any training actually. And I'm all for learning on the job, but as long as you're learning from other people who are very good at it, um, I it actually scares me. It would scare me to go work for a startup where they've always worked in startups, like all the management team, etc. Because
Mm,
I think they're great as like co-founders or like directors, but as like if you're working for them, I wouldn't do it. Like,
it's blind leading the blind, isn't it? Like
yeah,
you need
but
some
then they
process and structure to like
yeah,
grow.
and they expect you to like be good, and you're like, no, everyone needs management. Um,
Yeah.
I see this with some of my team where it's like, so for example, my co-founder came from academia, actually, like very PhD postdoc, had never worked in um, the, the business world or any world actually before. Um, and we had to like full on send him on management training because I was just like in my division, like I hired a lot of managers who had been in kind of the corporate world in a bit of a mix because I was like, they'll know the importance of your team is everything.
Mm.
And he hired based on skill set. And so that team, genuinely our first like engineering team, like one of them still works for us. It was a disaster because of poor management.
Right. Okay. So we all need management. Gibbs again has asked, do you think there is something to be said about second or third founders being more successful? Gibbs, I've
Yeah.
definitely got an answer to this, but I will shush and let Helen go for
No,
it.
Steph, you go. You go.
So there is actually a really interesting piece of research that's been done on this, and it's very nicely visualized in a simple bar chart, which three guesses who I came across this bar chart by or from. Our good friend Prof G, it was on his Instagram account. So it's actually Prof G. I'm honestly the #1 fangirl of Scott Galloway. So it was a Prof G Media and Forbes analysis of this piece of research that wanted to look into exactly your question, Gibran, if I pronounce your name correctly, Gibbs. And it looked at whether you were more successful the more times you go into business. And it found that there was actually a steady increase in the rate of success as you progress through the number of ventures. So after your first attempt, your rate of success goes up by, say, like an average of 9%. The next one is 19%. The next is 26. The next is 30, whatever. And it goes all the way up to 10, which if you can make it to 10 ventures is a whole other conversation. But it goes all the way to something like 86 or something. So like you're almost double, like more likely to succeed. Now, unpacking that is a whole other separate conversation as well in terms of like, you know, the tailwinds that you have to help you get to that position. But there's absolutely something to be said for, I firmly believe personally that your first business, obviously not in your case, Helen, but more often than not, your first business is just kind of like an itch to scratch. And it's so much more ego serving because you think that you've got a great idea, you think that you will be a great entrepreneur, and you see the glamorization of entrepreneurship in the magazines, on the podcast, whatever. So you almost need to get that first pancake out the way. And then your second business and third is where you put your ego to one side because it's just too painful and too expensive. And you've had to learn the hard way that actually you do need to put in front the market validation, the customer research, all the stuff that we teach here at One Day in order to be successful. Now, layer on top of that the connections that you make, the investors you may have had from previous rounds, the network, all of these other, talent, all of these other benefits that come along in the journey. So the short answer, Gibran, is yes. If you are second, third time around, you will be more successful. Helen, feel free to counterpoint on any of that.
I don't think I'd counter on any of it. I think it's fully true. And even though my first business succeeded, it gave me a false arrogance into my second. Because
Oh, interesting.
like
Ah,
I almost feel like I
you peaked too
succeeded
soon.
because of pure like grit and like running like so hard at it. I don't think there's any strategy whatsoever. So that's when we started Opply. I was like, I've got this. I'm a third time founder. I did not have it at all. And
That's
I
really interesting.
there's just interested on this on from my investor perspective. So like, I've got like a passion project that I run on the side, and like I'm scaling that in the right way on the side, and that'll be something I like. It's something I just deeply care about as an industry. It's like a female femtech basically business, and I remember talking to one of my investors about it, and I was just I wasn't even pitching, I was just generally talking. And she was like, just tell us when you make this into something and we'll invest in you.
There you go.
Like,
That's amazing. Yeah.
and that isn't even because she's like, we will openly talk about this. Like, I do not care if Opply like lives or dies. And I know you almost get to that point, that's lack of ego, right? Of like,
Yeah, exactly.
I I know that we'll have done everything that we could do to whatever, and it may just have been the wrong time. We lost motivation after a time, like we didn't want to run it for 15 years, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And when they say about the second time founder, I think there's just a blueprint of like, if you've properly ran a company, you
Mm.
kind of just know how to do the next one. So
Yeah.
it's almost like how VCs or similar run, right? They just want to get the 1 in 10. So if they can get
Yeah.
10 through you, it's more likely the one will be through you.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Gibran, that's really interesting. Yours is your third attempt, so would love to hear more about that. That's amazing. Kudos to you for keeping going. That definitely takes resilience. All right, question from NBC. NBC, I'm not sure what your actual name is, so please type that in the chat. That NBC asked, do you think coming from a corporate background made you more process oriented?
It made me process conscious. So
Interesting.
um I'm a chaotic, my team call me chaos. So as in like I would not say in a day I can sit and like make a structure or do any of that. Like I'm the total like visionary strategy in the room. Like I can create a strategy for anything and then like, right, I literally hired someone to like physically create the templates because I was like, I just
Yeah.
can't do the process. Um, so I appreciate process. I wouldn't say I'm process orientated. No.
Yeah. That's right. Thank you for the question, Mauricio. All right. Well, I think we're doing perfectly well on timing, if I do say so. Oh, sorry, Gavin. Sorry. Thank you for pointing me. Sorry, I did miss your question. Oh, okay. Gavin, sorry. Feedback on your landing page. We're going to have to do that separately. If you can share it in the community Slack channel, if you don't mind, then
Oh,
we
I
can
think
take a look. Or was
it
there
was
a
the
different
question as a marketplace founder, can you give me the best advice? I think about building a
about the
market.
marketplace?
Is that the
Okay.
question, Gavin?
I think so, yeah. Do you have a quick answer for that, Helen? Or do you want to
Hello,
share?
no, hello, no. It's not advice. It's not advice on my marketplace or landing page. I just mean as a marketplace founder myself. Can you give me any good advice for building a marketplace? And you, yeah.
Don't overtech it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't try and build a product that fits both of your sides of the marketplace. It won't. You have to build individual products for each side. So concentrate on one side that has um, the easiest to acquire first. And so whichever side is easier to acquire them first so you can show demand to the other side that is harder to acquire. But
That's
like don't try and build
fantastic
for both,
advice.
basically.
That's brilliant advice. Thank you so much, Gavin. Sorry, I misunderstood your question there. If you do want to, please do share, or I mean, all of you, share all your links in our community Slack channel anyway. And if you want reviews, advice, please let's keep the conversation going over on there anyway. And then finally, all right, let's squeeze in this last one from Mike Borelli. I love that surname. He's the one from Henkel, Helen, that you mentioned before. At which point, the one goes from the security of monthly salary to possible income. So love talking about this, really sensible. Helen, did you already have like a pot of savings before making the leap? What was your kind of, how did you transition from that?
Yeah. So I actually made a conscious decision on this. So on the first business, I say Suds and Gus when I did it, that was pure profit base. So do you remember when I said before, like you either scale a business profitably from the beginning or you go the VC route, where like profitability is still in there, but it's not as like king. Effectively. I think this really, if you're going the first route on this, I frankly, in my personality, didn't feel comfortable jumping until I had something which would sustain my life.
Mm,
And I'm being quite, I think other people are totally comfortable with that, by the way. I am from a background where I grew up like with absolutely no money. Like I don't have family backing. I don't have any of these networks. I don't have a cushion, any of it. So like it puts absolute terror into me. So like my mum's first question when I started Opply was, "What's the pension?" And so like I think this in a lot of worlds like is glamorized as like, oh, just go out on a limb and do this.
mm,
I For that first business, I had to know that I had at least enough to like sustain me monthly, I think, before I did
mm,
it. But again, just to be very clear on this, I really ran at it. So like I see this in a lot of founders where they're doing kind of bits week on week and they're like, it takes them absolutely forever to get to that point. Like I was saying to some of my founders before, like even when I started Opply when I was at Bain. And if anyone knows management consultancy, my God, like I used to work from like getting at 8 and work till 1 a.m. Like it was
Wow.
nuts. And then I'd get home, work from 1 till 5 on Opply, and then get 2-3 hours sleep. Did that for
Helen,
like, I know it's my
hell.
character, but like it's I was in hospital at the end of it, but whatever. But like
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That story's only going to end one way, in hospital.
would
No shit.
I have changed it? No. So
That's crazy.
I think this is leaning into whatever you are comfortable with. So like figure out what's number one for you. So number one for me was I knew I had to get to this point by this time, and that would make me feel comfortable with stability. Like
Yeah,
someone else could be like, I'm comfortable now, just like jumping and running through my savings. Like I've never touched a penny of my savings, and I never would.
yeah.
As in like I've actually got a founder who does a really cool thing where if she wants to do a Facebook ad, she has to make enough money on Vinted selling her clothes in order to do it.
That's cool. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. So like your money's got to
Um,
come from somewhere, hasn't it?
yeah.
Like super scrappy.
So that just depends. It really depends because there's other people who are like, I know other founders that will invest it all in it and are like all in it. This is,
Yeah.
I genuinely think like something from my background where if I don't have that level of stability, I won't do it.
It's a really, really interesting subject, which unfortunately we don't have tons of time to dive into. But as Helen said, I just want to underscore like how personal it is, how much it depends on really you as an individual, right? Like your risk tolerance, your privilege or lack thereof of privilege. Some people, one of the most common questions in entrepreneurship, if you've already gone from having, a proper job, is should I quit my job? And for me personally, I'm like, I need to go all in on something and I need that fire under my belly and I need to just like, it's going to work. It's almost that there's no plan B. Whereas if you're too comfortable, some people just like you're just not giving it the time and energy, kind of like Helen, your the second business, right? The 10-year burner, where it's like, I'm not actually getting this off the ground. I'm not making it happen. So we're not giving you advice one way or another. I think it's kind of like arguments for both sides, and really it's a super personal call.
I was just going to say, like, we have
Yeah.
probably the same common piece of advice in the middle, regardless of like if you've got a job or not, you have to throw at it. Like,
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
just be like, I have a job, therefore it's what, do you know, like I can just peter away at it. Like, if you have a job, you still have to like be committed and throw at it.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it means getting 2 hours sleep per night. Helen, I don't know how you did it. Honestly, that is very impressive. All right, quiz time, ladies and gentlemen. Either scan the QR code on screen or click the link that I've just popped in the chat there. Helen, this is new for me. I actually have no clue what the questions are or what the right answer is. So this is going to be as much of a surprise to me as it is to everyone else. All right, so first question. Actually, Helen's very nicely segues on from what we've just been talking about. What was the validation you needed to give you the confidence to take the leap from your corporate career into entrepreneurship? Is it option A, receiving feedback from people I respected to give me the confidence that I had broad enough skills to start a startup? Is it B, less validation, more inspiration that I went through a run of poorer cultures and managers that I wanted to ensure this wouldn't happen to me or my future team again? Or C, knowing that entrepreneurship would be a guaranteed path to quick success and minimal risks?
I don't know if anyone else's screen is weird. Mine's like half screened. Maybe it's just mine. Oh, there we go. Ignore it. It's back.
Helen, what's the right answer?
I think I actually gave 2 of those answers. So
Which one's correct?
The team one, the manager one.
That's what I was thinking. All right, option B. All right, cool. Next question. Big corporates and scrappy startups are at polar opposite ends of the spectrum, but what lessons did you take from your corporate career that actually helped with your entrepreneurialism? Is it option A, people management? You never get taught this in a startup, and corporates are generally excellent at it. Is it option B, clarity of communication / strategy. Everything is so executional from day one in a startup. It's rare you get the opportunity to put your head up and strategize. Corporate gives you the quick tools and templates to lean on when this happens. Or option C, how to rely on a large team to delegate tasks and handle responsibilities, which is common in startups. Sorry, guys, there's longer than usual. Go on, Helen. Which one's correct?
I did say to Juan, I was like, you can shorten these answers if you want.
It's more people getting sick of my voice, just reading all that.
So I'd actually say clarity of communication, that ability to really zone up and think visionary about your business when you're just like in it and you're slogging.
Okay, amazing. So I think that's option B for both, although option A I think also sounds right. So I'm not sure if both of them are valid. The people management one. Let's do option B. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. Helen, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know it's late here in the UK. I know that this is just the tip of the iceberg with your story, but I think you did quite well in kind of covering the main highlights. Appreciate all the lessons shared, all the entertainment has been amazing. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining, for listening in, for all your engagement this evening as well. Scan the QR code here for the next event, which is tomorrow. Create ads that don't get scrolled by. That sounds amazing. I'd love to join that. In the meantime, thank you so much, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you again next time, hopefully.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.